and I'm gonna have a crack at TIG welding now. And I think that looks pretty sick. Alright, so when it comes to intercooler piping, it's pretty much a big game of connect the dots, but in this case pipes. So this kit comes with straight pipes, 90s, 45s, and U's. Just like everything else, when you route your piping, you want to be strategic in how you do it. I think the goal we're going to try to achieve is to have as minimal silicon couplers as possible, and where I will have one coming out of an intercooler, we'll be using a straight rather than elbow, because the idea is the less silicon joiners there are, the less chance there is for one to pop off and give you a boost leak. On top of that, using more generic couplers like straight ones means that if you do blow one or tear one on the track, you're more likely to be able to find someone who has a spare, as opposed to if you have a bunch of elbows or 45s or things like that. We're going to start on the intake side. As you can see, I've already got a 45 sitting there. I did have a straight mocked up, but I kind of like the aesthetic of it coming out then down. We have removed the MAF as we won't be needing anymore. We're running a 3-bar map sensor. So straight off the intake already pretty much points us in the direction we are. I think we'll probably just need small straight section to extend it, and then probably a 90 to connect to that. Being that that's the easier side as I have more clearance, I'll tackle this one first. Now, it is important to note that when you're doing your cooler pipe, you want to make sure you have your 3 anchor points where they need to be and finalized, because once they're all set, that's when you connect your piping. If you haven't finished clocking your turbo where it needs to be, or you need to move it, and then you go and do your intercooler piping first, you're going to get ahead of it, then you'll end up having to change it all. So your 3 anchor points are going to be turbo, your intercooler, and the intake side. Once you've got all of those amounts of where they need to be, then you connect the dots. So very important, make sure you don't do it the other way around. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this 45 into here first, so I know that this isn't going anywhere. This will give me a home for where I need to connect the other pieces to. Now that I've got the 45 here, I'm going to mock up the 90. Then I'll make a mark and cut it, and that way the joiner that I use from the cooler to this pipe will just be a 3-inch to 2.5-inch straight one, as opposed to 3 to 2.5 elbow. As always, less is more. It's always easier to cut more than it is to add material if you cut too short. So better to mark it 100 times and cut it. Might take a little bit longer, but that way you get it right the first time. So I went ahead and made my first cut. A good thing I like to do is run tape around it. It makes following a line a lot easier. If you don't have tape, you can also run like a zip tie, a hose clamp, anything that's going to sit around the circumference. Draw a line with a marker and makes it easier to cut. We're fighting daylight and my batteries are dying fast and I can recharge them, so hopefully we can get this done. So I went ahead and made a cut right in the middle of this bend here, because I do need to pie cut it. It's sitting a little bit away from this 45 here. So by leaving a bit of material here, I'll be able to bend it where I need. Then I can make a pie cut infill piece and get it all welded together. So you can see we've got the 45 pointing towards this hole behind the headlight. We've got our 90 that I've got a pie cut in it. And we're trying to aim it towards that pipe. So what I do now is I'm gonna measure distance between those two. I'll cut a piece to extend it, I'll tape them together, and then that way I'll be able to point this exactly where it needs to. I'll probably tape this up, and that way I can make a pie cut for it. So it's about 135 mil. So now you can see I've got my 135 mil extension, straight extension, onto the 45. I think that looks a lot nicer, coming straight and down. So that points out pretty much there. So now I can get my WAS 90, pop that where I need it. And that pretty much, if you can see that, points this pretty bang on there. I'm pretty happy with that. So what I do is I'll make some reference lines on that, mark some straight lines on each side. That way, if this does come undone, I know where that goes. And I will tape this where it needs to be, make some measurements, make a cut, and we'll go from there. I think we're on the money there. That's probably going to be it for me for tonight. I'm going to have to pick this up again. It is what it is when you're working outside. We make do with what we got. At least I'm happy to get one side done. So you can see we've got that hose clamped onto the intake. We've got the 45 coming down, taped to our 140 mil straight extension. Comes at the bottom here, into our 90 that I put a 20 mil pie cut in. Small bit of a gap there, but we're not hiding anything. Now that I've got this mocked up, I'm going to actually make a bunch of markings so I know where everything sits, and I'm going to take this to work and tick it all up. So I might remake that. We'll see how we go. I might be able to fill that gap, but yeah, pretty good. So we come up through here, got a nice amount of clearance, and that's one side of the piping done. So we'll pick this up again. All right, so another day, another clip. I'm here at work. I've brought the intercooler piping and I'm gonna have a crack at TIG welding. Now, I'm very new to TIG welding. I've done a little bit on stainless steel, which I quite enjoy. I think aluminum is gonna be a bit of a challenge. I've done a little bit of research, I've watched some videos. A few people said it's a bit hard because aluminum gets hotter, the settings are different, the technique's different. But if you know me, I'm not scared of a challenge, so I'm gonna give it a red hot crack. I'm gonna show you guys the process, and fingers crossed I don't mess it up. And just remember, this isn't a how to weld. I'm just gonna show you the way I do it. I'm not a professional by any means. It is very important when you're TIG welding that you make sure your surfaces, your tip, filler rod is all clean. You want to Scotch Brite any of the oxidation off. Clean it with a solvent like acetone or isopropyl alcohol. You want to make sure everything's clean because any contamination is going to get into the weld. So if you look at the edges here, you can see it's nice and cleaned up. You also want to deburr the insides and clean the insides as well, because a prep isn't only important on the top, but on the inside as well. As the weld penetrates, you want to make sure the inside is as clean as the outside. Now bear in mind, any tips I give you is basically anything I've been taught myself, anything I've learned from watching a video. I'm not a professional. I'm just being honest, being raw, and showing you guys just a dude having a crack. So I know with welding videos, there's a lot of armchair experts. I don't care because I know my limits and I know I'm just learning. So before I picked up the camera, I've probably spent about the last maybe hour and a bit just practicing on a few pipes. I'm going to show you because everyone shows you their nice clean dimes. I think a lot of people are scared to show their welds up close, especially in a learning process. I'm not, because I'm all about having a crack and learning. So you can see here, this was my first crack. Disgusting. I was having issues controlling the heat. The arc kept jumping, and just learning how to start the puddle was a bit tricky. Over here you can see I started to get a few drops down, but again blew out a little bit here. This was my third attempt. Starting to get a little bit better, and then this is my last attempt, which I'm pretty happy with considering I've got about an hour's practice in. I did try a little bit of flat bar over here, trying to get the settings right. It's a bit tricky because obviously different settings for different thicknesses of materials. This is a lot thicker. That was way too thin and too hot. You can see it was just melting away. So I thought, I'm welding pipe, I should be testing on pipe. So I've dialed in the settings, getting used to the foot controller, how much pressure to apply for how much amperage I need. I'm pretty happy with that for what it is. So now I'm going to go ahead, prep these pipes so we can get them tacked and welded. I'm going to show you how I do that. So you can see I've unwrapped the masking tape. I've got my 2 lines here, 2 lines there, 1 line where my thumb is. I like to do this because that way, if you put 1 mark on each side and you do separate them like this, put them on the bench, you get to pick it up again. Instead of trying to figure out which orientation, you know the 2 lines go there and 1 line goes to the back. I've also marked side B and B and A on that side, so that way, like I said, you put things down, come back, you're not going to get it the wrong way around. So that's what I like to do. So what I'll do now is, like I did on this side, mask that with tape. I'll take it over there, make sure you get the end nice and straight. That way when we butt these up, there's no gaps, because gaps are going to be hard to fill, and if we have it nice and tight, it's going to make welding this a lot easier. Not sure if you can see that, but like I said, it's just the smallest amount on the edge. That way, your 2 pieces that are joined together when they weld will be nice and clean, and you're not going to be scratching up the shiny surface that you're not welding. You don't have to do it like that. Like I said, that's just what I like to do. I'm learning and I want to try and make it easy for myself and just do things the right way, so that's how I do it. Now that I got the pipes all prepped and ready to weld, I'm going to put them on my handy clamp here. This unit you just clamp into your normal bench vise. It allows you to put a pipe in there and clamp it, which is pretty handy when you're trying to weld it, because you don't want to be denting the clamps. It's got a nice V channel here that the pipe sits in. This makes things a bit easier. You don't need it, but it definitely makes the job easier. So this is how it sits in the clamp. Like I said, just clamps into there. Now you can see here, I've got my marks lined up. You can see my nice prep surface ready for me to weld. It's got a tiny bit of a bevel on it. I like to do that just that way it makes it easier to penetrate the pipe. And now I'd say that one's ready to tack. So this is a torch setup I'm using. It's a number 6 cup with a gas shield on it. This is our filler rod. And like I said before, you want to make sure everything's clean. So I've already went ahead and Scotch Brite this. I've got my alcohol in the rag here. I'm going to clean this, clean the tip, clean the pipe, and then we'll TIG it. As you can see, I've got my pipes all tacked up. I've done top, bottom, left and right. That way I believe it's not going to walk in any way. It's tacked in all four corners, and there's small tacks as well, so that way when I run a bead over it, I'll be able to mount those easily, and you shouldn't tell they were there. And there's the finished product. It's not perfect. For my first red hot crack, you can see where I started to get consistent, and then I'd have to stop to rotate the pipe. A few little bit of a high spot there, that's fine. A few nice ones there. Overall, I think it's a solid effort. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'll just go ahead and repeat the same thing for the other side. There we go, that straight section all welded in. Pretty much same consistency as the other side, I'd say. But like I said, I'm pretty happy considering about an hour ago, I didn't even know how to do this.
Meanwhile, at the Krusty Krab.
All right, new day. Damn, with the fresh cut. So last bit you would have seen me TIG welding up the intercooler piping. The last bit I had to do was the pie cut on the corner. Unfortunately, it got late. My batteries on the camera died. I just was not having a good time. I kept blowing holes in it. The gaps were probably a bit too big to fill for me. What I ended up doing was starting again. I laid this down on the table, ended up completely remaking it to avoid having to do the pie cut, as that U-joint is a bit more than a 90, which is what we needed. So I ended up going ahead and doing that. And this is a finished product. I think for my first time TIG welding aluminium, we did pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. Obviously not perfect, but I'm not hiding anything here because you're only going to see me get better. It was pretty fun to finally get a chance to get into some aluminium TIG welding. I've heard it's hard, now I know how hard it is. A lot less forgiving than stainless in terms of heat, and it gets hot real quick. My arms were burning, but nonetheless it was still fun. Having said that, this is now ready to go into the car. The only thing left to do is roll a bead onto the edge of this, because if you just fit that without a bead, what can happen is when you're on a boost, your hose clamp has nothing stopping it from coming off. So what can happen is you can pop a coupler off, you lose boost, no power, you've got to stop, go back off track, fix it. No one likes that. So I've ordered a bead roll off eBay, $45. Once I've finished doing all the piping, I'll go ahead and roll the beads where I need to. If you don't want to do that, you've already got the welder out. What you can do, some people do, is weld a bead around that. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. All it has to do is stop the hose clamp from coming off. Now you're probably thinking, yeah, that's cool. You learned to TIG welder, that's awesome, but I don't have a TIG welder. What do I do? Well, another option you can do is just use silicone joiners. The kits come with them. Use them where you can. You've got straight ones, you've got elbows. You can make it work with what you've got. Obviously the downside to that is being you've got more chances of leak points, more chance of couplers blowing off. So like I said, ideally you want to set up with as little as possible, but if that's all you got, that's all you got. That's also an option that you can do. But if you're thinking about learning and having a crack, don't be scared, don't be intimidated. Do some research, watch some videos, ask some friends, or get yourself a friend who's a welder. But I'm always about giving a red hot crack, and I think we did pretty good for our first time, and I suggest you give it a crack too. That being said, I think we should go and fit this and see how it looks. Oh yeah. Damn, my rail was bent. Like, damn, that's actually pretty bent. I should probably fix that. Anyway, bro, so hopefully it should be as easy as snaking this up through here. Probably gonna put this end into here first. And then go ahead and fit this part. And boom, just like that, we've got intercooler cold side piping done. Here's a better look of it. Intake straight down through here. We've got clearance around it. Comes out through here. A little bit tight there, but that's fine. I can either cut that or hammer that in. That's just a return here, not a big deal. And then into our 2.5 to 3 inch coupler. Pretty chuffed with that, honestly. We're pretty well away from the wheel. Nothing to worry about there. We're far away, but with that angle, we tilt back enough that bash bar's not gonna be an issue. If we do get a hit, it's hopefully not gonna kink this. And I think that looks pretty sick. I'm going to say fitting the cooler and the piping is going to be one of the biggest instant gratifications besides fitting the turbo itself. It's when it really starts looking like a turbo car. And I don't know if I show it, but I'm super keen. As I said, first time boosting a car, this is where it starts to come together and I'm all for it. So now that that's done, we'll go and tackle the other side, which is going to be a little bit tricky, and I'll show you why. Obviously, I've got to clock this a little bit more. I didn't realize I wasn't going to be able to go through there because you want your cooler piping to be simple, not only so it's not hard to make, but if you ever have to remake it, if you get one crushed in an accident or whatever, you don't want to have headaches for yourself. So I don't want to be going like this and back up to here. So what I'll do now is I'll clock this to the pointer down here, which is where you probably want to come out, which brings us to our first issue. The aircon strikes again. Another issue, another problem to resolve, but I am going to do it. I've already found a workaround for the lines that we're going to get custom made. I've done a bit of research. I spoke to one of my friends. Apparently you can do AN lines, which makes my life a bit easier. There is a little bit of modifying to do on the fitting section that goes to the pump, but I'm all for it. We've got a workaround for that. I have been pondering on this for a minute. A few things I was thinking about. I could cut the tub out. Very common on drift cars to cut this section here out. It allows you to adjust your tie rods and your alignment on the fly really easy. By just reaching in, you can inspect things for damage. I'm not sure if I'm 100% sold on it yet. I do like the idea of keeping the bay cleaner, less debris, rubber and everything coming up into the bay. Not sure if I will, not sure if I won't. I'll start with trying to see if I can avoid it. If I absolutely have to, I can, but even then, don't really want to run the piping anywhere near the wheel, possibly even trimming the tiniest bit of the corner, which either I can run the piping through there or move that over to there, then run the piping through here. Obviously you can see that headlight assembly is in the way. That's not an issue because I plan to run a headlight intake duct, so kind of one of your combat eyes. I think they look pretty sick and obviously it gives me a reason to use it because we've got a turbo now, so we need maximum flow to the filter there and it looks cool, which is pretty much the reason why we do anything, isn't it? So without having that there, I do have more room for a filter and more access around here. I'm thinking I might start with removing the headlight as that's in the way for starters. Now with the headlight out the way, you can see what I'm talking about. We have a little bit of room that I can probably get away with cutting here. That way, even with the headlight vent, it shouldn't be in the way. But what I might do first is clock the turbo to see relatively where I can point it towards, and that way I'll know where my best spot for the cooler piping will go. And clocking the turbo is as easy as cracking these bolts here, using a 1/2 inch spanner, and spinning it like that. So what I've done is I've clocked it so that the turbo outlet is pointing right down. As you can see, what's also right below is my chassis rail. So I think what I'm gonna have to do, I already had to buy a fitting for this. I might either try and buy an elbow, or I might actually even potentially look at cutting this and welding an elbow, because it's looking like I'm gonna cut this metal here, come up from the intercooler, and then snake back towards the turbo. So it is going to be a bit more on the tricky side. I already knew that was going to be a problem. Every car's going to be different. Sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're hard. I'm not worried about it. At the end of the day, it's what I have to do. So we're just going to figure it out. So I'll lock that down. I'm pretty happy with that for the time being. I'll cut this section out so that I know what I'm working with, and then we'll go from there. Just like that, we now have more room to work with. So I just went ahead and sat the headlight back in, just so I can see what I'm working with in terms of room. You can see now that cutting this bit of steel out gives me a little bit more room around here. Obviously, the AC dryer is still in the way. I could move it. I'm gonna try not to first because it will complicate the line setup. I don't wanna have to make more work for myself. So hopefully the headlight vent doesn't take as much room up as this does. Hopefully it doesn't, because that's going to make my life a lot harder. For now, I'll take the headlight back out. I'll start mocking up some piping and try and tuck it as close to this corner. So even if the headlight vent falls shorter than the stock assembly, but it's still tight, I'm not going to have to modify it. I'm not going to have any issues, so I'll aim for that. So this is what I've come up with so far. Got a 90-degree bend coming out of the intercooler with a little elbow, which was an offcut off of the U piece I cut, which points it towards a turbo. It is going to have to turn down whether I do a pie cut or I utilize another bend here. It's looking more like I'm probably gonna have to cut the end off the turbo and weld something there, because the chances of having the outlet come straight down and the bend on there is probably gonna be a bit impossible. Also, without having the headlight vent, it's hard to tell whether I even have this room to begin with. I've reached out to a few people who are running them, but for now we're just gonna go with it. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna sort of mock what angle I need this to be at so that I can go ahead and take my spare turbo. I have a second one over here. My buddy Tim gave me two, shout out Tim. So that way, this will actually be the turbo I'll be using. It's in a lot better condition, even though it's a bit dirtier, has no sharp play. This one I've been using for mock-up. So what I'll do is I'll mock up the angle, and how I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna wing it. I'm gonna use my little 1/4 inch ratchet, sit that central to the hole, pretty much point it where I think, which is pretty much there. And then I'm gonna mark a line on here to tell me which way the elbow is gonna point. So that way at work, what I can do is I can just mock it, tuck it, bring it home, because I don't have a TIG welder at home. And it saves me an extra trip of bringing the elbow home, doing that, then taking it back to work. Hopefully I can get it pretty close. So I'll put the camera down, I'll mark that. Now you can see I've got my little paint mark there. So if I line this back up with that line over the top, you can see we point directly towards my cooler piping. Yeah, it's swinging, yeah, it's kind of sketch, but at the end of the day, you got to work with what you got. Like I said, I could go and find an elbow, bring it here, then mock it, then take it to work, tack it, bring it back. If I can try skip a step by making a calculated wing, then I'm going to do it. And that's pretty much how I'm going to do everything, because we don't always have the ideal conditions. It's cars, sometimes you plan, sometimes you don't. But if you stop every time you hit a road work, you're never going to get it done. Sometimes you got to use your noggin and make things work. That's what we're going to do. Hopefully you guys can take some inspiration from that and just have that mindset that even though you hit roadblocks, you got to figure it out, because if you think it's going to be easy building the cars, put down the tools now. So this is where we're at. We're looking. Kind of does OD me a bit that it's not symmetrical, but it is what it is. Like I said, obviously we're trying to keep AC. If you don't care and you're happy to get rid of it, then it'll make your life a lot easier, because you can just run the elbow straight up along the chassis rail to that. But I'm difficult. I want to be bougie, and if I can make it work, why not? I also love a bit of a challenge. Sometimes I'm drawn to doing things the harder way, so people say, but find a solution for things that would generally stop a lot of people. So if I can make the turbo setup on the M42 while keeping AC, I think that's a pretty good feat, and it's more R&D for this platform. With that nutted out, I think I got a little bit of pottering to do, a little bit of ordering to do. I wasn't going to buy the headline tank yet because there's a few different styles. I wanted to make up my mind before I order one, but I think I'm going to have to order one quicker than I thought. That way I know what my clearances are and I can move on. My bad, I totally forgot to film a close for this. Anyway, car's coming together pretty nicely. We've got half the intercooler piping done, just got to do the other half. That'll be all the plumbing done, ready to fit all the goodies we got from TI Performance, which I can't wait to get on the car. Also, I want to hear from you guys. Are you liking the more in-depth content? Obviously I dive pretty deep with the fabrication side of things. Is that sort of how you guys want me to do it, or do you want me to skim over a bit more? Let me know, because I'm going to do it how you guys want it. So leave a comment below what you reckon. Is there anything else you want to see me do more? I know a few people said I talk too fast. I'm going to try slow it down a bit, but that's how I talk. Other than that, give me some feedback so I can make these videos better for you guys. As always, I appreciate everyone's support, and if you like the vibe, make sure to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So we'll pick this up on another day. On another day. On another day.